Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tommo, and welcome to my post-race Chinwag for the 2024 Qatar Sprint Race. That's right, we've got some sprinting to talk about. 19 laps around the Lusail, not street circuit. It kind of feels a bit like a street circuit to me, just because it's so almost kind of barren outside of the immediate extremities of the track. But it's a quick track. It's a track the drivers like a lot. Was it a sprint race we liked a lot? If you're here live on YouTube, thank you, Patrick, Halita, Hassan, Yagwan, D2D Guy, Angus, Nate, Vladislav, and the rest of you. Let me know in the live chat your race rating out of 10 for this sprint. 10 being the best sprint of all time, 1 being an absolute howler, stinky pile of doo-doo, right? Lovely jubbly. Welcome everyone also on audio-only platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the rest. I do upload this video version on Spotify after the fact as well, if you want to watch with your eyes on Spotify, not just your ears, okay? Let's talk about it. Let's have a little chinwag about this race. Let me know. Numbers. 6, 5, 4, 4, 6, 0, 4. Savage. Right, let's get a little poll going. Race rating out of 10. I reckon the low is probably, I want to say 3 or lower. A 4, a 5, or a 6 or above, just based off what you've kind of said in the live chat. Again, make sure you can watch these live on YouTube if you want to get involved in the live chat, or after the fact, or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. Okay, lovely jubbly, happy days. Yeah. You know what, for me, it was a... obviously, we didn't get back for the lead. We had a coordinated McLaren 1-2 at the start. If George Russell had managed to hold position ahead of Oscar on lap 1, could have been a very different story. But of course, where you have 2 cars leading the train from the same team, they can coordinate. And of course, Lando kept Oscar in his DRS, protected Oscar, defended Oscar, and then gave the Oscar the position at the end, didn't he? Which I was like, I almost spat my drink out. I was not, 0% of me was expecting Lando to give up the position to Oscar at the end. Also, I'm going to turn this heat off because it makes a annoying burr in the background, but it's quite cold. It's not actually that cold today, but you know, I want to be a warm boy. McLaren was also surprised, Haliti. You're right. Yeah, McLaren did not orchestrate this one. This was all on Lando. And I've said in the thumbnail, that was smart. And I think that was actually very, very smart from Lando to do it when he did it. We'll get into why in a bit. What are you saying race rating wise? 18% of you have given this a 3 or lower. 29% a 4, 32% a 5, and 22% a 6 or above. So for me, race rating wise, I've given it a 5. I'm aligned with 32% of you, pretty much in the middle of the range. If it wasn't for, we obviously, in terms of like entertainment talking points, obviously the Lando Oscar reverse position is kind of an interesting talking point. Perez getting overtaken from a pit lane start, which I don't know, has that ever happened in F1 before? That's kind of interesting. Quite an interesting lap 1. We saw Magnussen gained loads of positions. Max lost out a bunch. He got really compromised behind the Ferraris. Lap 1 was kind of interesting. Lawson dropped like a stone as well. And we had some interesting stuff lap 1. Then the race very much kind of, again, the fact you had 2 McLarens at the front really did kind of suck out any potential for an exciting, which kind of George was talking about at the end, being like, I just wanted to give a show to the fans. Yeah, all right, George, you wanted to win the sprint race, and fair play, because he's been rapid as of late, as has George Russell. So you can't begrudge him for that. You can't begrudge him for that at all. And of course, we had Lewis and Charles going wheel to wheel in what I think is the epitome of what I want to see from good, hard, fair racing. In my opinion, because there's been a lot of talk from the drivers being like, oh, George was saying it. And I was quite disappointed, honestly, with George being like, yeah, oh, if you're ahead at the apex, then you should be able to just, force the other car off. And I don't know if it's just this mentality in open wheeler racing that fundamentally, I don't know, like I'm a touring car guy first and foremost. I love multiple forms of motorsport, not just Formula One. And that's not what I consider to be good, hard, fair racing. I think Charles and Lewis demonstrated today in their little scrap what it is to lever the space, as Fernando Alonso famously once said, because I think Fernando's a great example of a good wheel-to-wheel racer that I think everyone should look at for inspiration, because I think Fernando's always done it right. But yeah, 5 out of 10 for me. 35% of you think of 5 as well, which is the biggest. So we're all kind of aligned that this was mid. The definition of a mid sprint race. The question will always be, well, would you rather this or an FP3? I mean, I definitely don't want sprints every weekend. I definitely don't want them every weekend. I think that's too much. I don't mind them being, I think, like a quarter of the season. 6 of 24 is about right. I think they will gradually increase, but probably to... I don't know if I see them becoming like the main format anytime soon. But I could see Stefano pushing for, sprints to be at least 50% of the calendar. I think, commercially, it just works. The tracks want them because it brings more footfall on Fridays because there's a competitive session. More footfall Saturday because you're seeing an actual race. And again, having been to a sprint race when I went Austria last year, my experience as a fan going was better, to be honest, than a standard weekend, doing a sprint weekend. But I would say, ultimately 99% of people who are watching at home on telly, are following a sport around their life, around their work, around their responsibilities, right? And I just don't think the sprint format is the right one for this sport overall. But I do think there's a place for it. Okay, I do think there's a place for it. Hulkenberg gapping Verstappen. I know, LFA. There were some interesting bits to talk about. There were definitely some interesting bits to get into. The result is as follows. Oscar Piastri finishes ahead of Lando Norris. Now, who was here Wednesday? Okay. Now, at the time, I was a bit like, it's another long moment. When I have a stinker. But actually, you know what? 200 IQ play, it has to be, right? Turns out my graphic error in Wednesday's live stream was spot on. Lando Norris with Oscar Piastri's face. Come on. What? Bruv, what are the chances? What are the chances I make this mistake and then Lando wins but doesn't win because he gives Oscar the... What are the chances? What are they? Give me a percentage because I reckon it's pretty small. I mean, the chances of me making a graphical error, they are not small, okay? They are not small, but yeah, crazy prediction from me. But there you go. Oscar Piastri wins from Lando Norris, George Russell P3, Sainz, Leclerc 4-5, Lewis Hamilton P6, Nico Hulkenberg P7, got past Max on lap 1. Max had a bit of a stinker. He was oversteering like crazy. Gasly and Hulkenberg got past him. But Hulkenberg not only held that gap, but actually closed the gap to the top guys towards the end as well. Nico, Haas, there's a... I don't think it's such a thing so now because Parc Fermé reopens after the sprint race, which enables the teams to kind of have a look at their setup and change things up. And Haas are not going to want to do that. Red Bull are definitely going to have to do that because Max was, again, making no progress in the race. Checo, I've got no more words for Checo, to be honest. So Red Bull are going to be changing things up in hope that they can salvage some performance because Max, even in the hands of Max, he was nowhere near the pace of the fastest 3 cars. And M&S Giant Chocolate Buttons are £3 now. Are you kidding, Avkid? Honestly, world's gone to pot. But yeah, Pierre Gasly could not hold on to the points, unfortunately for him. So Nico gets 2, which means that gap between Haas and Alpine opens by 2 points. Kevin Magnussen going like the clappers. Shame he had a bad qualifying, really, because he made mad moves at the start. P10 in the end for K-Mag. Both Haas were quick. Alonso P11 again. So often. Bottas P12. Fair play to him holding on. Stroll, Ocon, Albon, Lawson. Big shame. To be honest, I didn't actually see what happened to Liam. So I'm not going to comment on Liam Lawson's drop. I'm sure one of you in chat will let me know why he fell back so much. I think he was kicking up a bit of gravel on kind of turn 1-2, wasn't he? But either way, still ahead of Yuki Just. And then Franco Colapinto ahead of Zhou Guanyu, ahead of Sergio Perez. Perez has completely given up on trying to defend his position through merit and just like, I have a contract, I will 100% be in this seat next year. And again, like Tommy did a good Kit Kat related tweet, and I'm not being funny. Like I think Checo was having a break, wasn't he? At the pit lane start. Like, bro, like Checo, you've been in this sport for so long, and the fact that it's Colapinto, who's what in his 6th, 7th Grand Prix ever, who's the guy who's behind you, and he's like, oh, it's a green light. I need to go as well. What are you doing, Perez? If you've got a problem, I'm just going to drive around you. It beggars belief. What? It's like Checo is trying. It's like he's trying to get fired. I don't, like, is he? I don't know. Is there some game? I can only speculate on this because it's been so bad as of late. And it's just been sloppy. It's sloppy from him so often, right? Yes, the team bear a significant degree of responsibility, but it's been stuff like that. It's just so sloppy for a driver of his experience, right? I don't know. Is he trying to be like, I don't want to leave. If you fire me, I'll get a payout. I don't know, right? But it would not surprise me. It would not surprise me. And yeah, maybe Halita, he wants that payoff and just to have a, like when Kimi Raikkonen got paid for a whole season by, was it McLaren who paid him for a year? Or was it Ferrari who paid him for a year? I can't remember. For him to not race for them. Because Kimi was the master of the contract. What a man. Yeah, it's painful. Painful watching. Painful viewing experience for any Checo fans out there. Oh, you must be sick of it. You must be sick of it. So the driver standings are as follows. Of course, Max has already wrapped up the Drivers' Championship. Not too much of note here. Hulkenberg gains a couple of points, but no positional changes really at all. The Constructors obviously is a bit more interesting. McLaren opened that gap to 30 points ahead of Ferrari. Ferrari 37 ahead of Red Bull. So it feels like it's going into a convincing 1-2. You got to say, you know, the way George was going and how he was able to, even though Lando was giving Oscar DRS, he was able to, you know, give Oscar something to think about. I think George, if they play it right, I think George was the quickest car on track today. I think Lando possibly definitely had more pace in his locker. And obviously Oscar was slower in part because of the dirty air he was getting from Lando. Clean air is king, right? But I think, yeah, I think it was a good day for Mercedes, good day for George. Good day for George, definitely. Obviously too late to do anything from a team standings point of view. I mean, that's 122 behind Red Bull. I mean, it's too little too late now, right? But if it wasn't such an inconsistent season, it wouldn't necessarily be completely off. But yeah, all in all, I think, well, look, what's next? What happens tomorrow? What did we learn today that we can carry on to tomorrow? Again, it's not as much of a spoiler as the sprints used to be because now the cars go back out of Parc Fermé. Teams can change setup. Teams can change approach. They put a different front wing on Checo's car to kind of test it out at the end of the sprint. And I mean, it's pragmatic for sure. I think as well that's possibly to help Max because Max's pace was, again, nowhere. He couldn't catch. He was losing pace to Nico Hulkenberg at the end. And we still have quali today. I completely forgot about that, Halita. I completely forgot we still got quali today. But quali is, you know, over a lap. I mean, the McLarens will be quick. George will be quick. Lewis will hopefully be quick, but who knows? He's proper down on himself at the minute, isn't he? He's having a real crisis of confidence. Is Lewis Hamilton at the moment? We know in a race he can put it together, but over a lap, you know, I'd love to see him, you know, rediscover that inherent ability over a lap, and I hope he does at Ferrari. But it's not looking good. Brev is the best way to put it. On the F2 sprint as well. Yeah, when does that start? That must be fairly soon, though. What a job from Paul Aaron, by the way. Put it on pole. Alpine reserve driver now over Victor Martin, which is a bit of a kick in the teeth for Victor, isn't it? I think Victor's a good driver. It's rubber the green maybe hasn't gone quite in his favour, but I think Paul Aaron's been fantastic this year. So, okay, 15 minutes till F2. Oh, no, 20 past 4. Okay, cool. 35 minutes. Yeah, but well done, Paul Aaron, for getting your shot as reserve driver. I think that is deserved. Obviously, after Mercedes dropped him going into this season, he's been fantastic this year. Not won a race, so hopefully this weekend's is time to deliver. Time to deliver. But yeah, for tomorrow, for the race, I mean, look, obviously Haas are onto a good thing with their setup, clearly. Nico had pace. Red Bull have work to do. I think, obviously, of the front guys, it felt like Ferrari, as the race went on, they kind of settled into it, and Sainz was starting to give George something to think about a bit. It does feel like, I'm not convinced over a race distance the Mercedes will be able to hold on to its pace. I still think McLaren's, especially Lando. But even then, it's really hard to judge. Yes, Oscar was slower and needed Lando to pull him along, but the dirty air was significant. He was when you're within a second of a car, even when you're within 4, 5, 6 seconds of a car in front, the dirty air affects you. So, George obviously had more pace. He was going for it. It was going to be more aggressive with Oscar than Oscar was going to be with Lando. It was a hard one to call, but you've got to think out of those. Lando and George it's odds on one of them, isn't it? Surely. And Lando again, yeah, like you say, Lando had pace in the back end that he could definitely still potentially deliver. Thank you, Ferox, by the way, for the super chat. RSS have just released their FH 2026 concept. Have they now? Interesting. I'll have to have a look at that after. Thank you for letting me know, Ferox, because I'll need to look at the 2025 model that they do to then do my redesign videos. That's going to be a January, early February prep video. But thank you for letting me know, Ferox. Appreciate that. Other than that, any other particular things? Any other, like, Gasly could pull out a worldie? Yeah, I think Gasly's driving phenomenally at the minute. I think, that's 6 Q3s in a row when you include sprint qualifyings, that at least one Alpine car has made Q3. So Alpine, it's Alpine or Haas, isn't it, for the 5th quickest car. Alpine and Haas are both clear of Aston Martin. They're both clear of Racing Bulls, as far as I'm concerned. I'm pretty sure on that. Definitely Williams and obviously Sauber. I think around this track, the Haas just seems really, really good. But again, I think last weekend I'd probably say that the Alpine was the quicker car of the two. Who's on pole? Yeah, pole's a hard one to call. I think George's adeptness over a lap is huge, right? And I think what we did see today is just how important leading and having that clean air at the front is going to be. Almost in such a way that it might make sense, now that the cars are out of Parc Fermé, to actually try and dial in a more qualifying centric setup to your car, because that will pay dividends over a race distance. I mean, it's hard to look past Lando. To be honest. But yeah, I think George could definitely do something about it. And I think Oscar's got a lap in him. He just doesn't. I think Oscar's peak lap time is pretty close to Lando's, but Lando gets close to that peak so much more consistently. And look, that shouldn't be a surprise. Oscar's at the end of his 2nd season in F1. Lando's been here since 2019. So, fair enough, right? I think that's what Oscar needs to work on. I think race management wise, he's getting there, but he's still overlap. He's got that ceiling. He's got those peaks. He's not hitting it enough. He's not hitting it enough for sure. And Lando had a good start today, which was great. Finally. But yeah, look. I've got to be honest, I did not see the reversal in positions coming at all. I was completely shocked. I was completely taken by surprise. And we heard post-race that McLaren weren't putting any pressure on Lando to do it, to reverse positions, whatever. This was a Lando call, and he executed it very well. It's always a risk. You don't know how close George could have been to the back of Oscar. It's a risk. It's a risk that he took. He took that on his shoulders. And the reason I think it's smart, after that Brazil sprint, there was a bit of an IOU, right? Oscar did the job to help out Lando, reverse positions, and better for Lando to bank that now and almost return that favour and be like, right, now we've got a clean slate. You don't know me, I don't know you. Clean slate going into next year. Lando, it's pragmatic, it's smart of Lando to give Oscar back that, just within that internal dynamic and that internal politics that always exists within F1 teams. It's smart for him to do this now in a race that doesn't mean anything, right? It's the same amount of constructors' points. He's already lost the Drivers' Championship to Max. Better to bank that now than next year when, you know, say, for example, next year we're in race 2, 3, whatever, and it's a similar position. Or, I don't know, something where Oscar is ahead but maybe doesn't. Like, that itch has been scratched now. That's done. That's finished. He's done it. He's used this opportunity to wipe the slate clean and go into next year firmly on, like, equal footing with none of this potential, right? Whether or not that's... I don't think internally there was... Personally, I don't think there was much of an internal pressure to be like, oh, yeah, like you need to give one back to Oscar. Maybe even from the fan base, maybe just inside Lando's own mind to just go into next year being like, all right, yeah, you gave one to me, I gave it back to you. Bosh, happy days. And does Oscar still owe Lando for Hungary? I don't know. I would say no. I think Kermit, that was a different situation. I think, you know, McLaren knowingly pitted the drivers when they pitted them with the assumption that Lando would immediately give the position back. So I think that's a bit different. Because that was a part of the strategy that eventually it did pay off. Of course, in Hungary, Lando did give the position back eventually, but you know, and it was messy, right? It shouldn't have been messy. It should have been clear and concise and whatever. We've talked about that at length, but I think that's a bit different to just kind of, you know, Oscar gave Lando the position in Brazil for the championship, for the Drivers' Championship, which is now gone. So Lando can return the favour and Bosch, and he, you know. So fair play to Lando. But yeah, it was just funny, man. I just did not see that coming in any way, shape or form. I was shook. And I was confused. I was like, is he trying to do like a... You know what I thought at first? Do you remember when the Ferraris in Indianapolis tried to do the side-by-side over the line? I was like, bro, you trying to pull that? Is that what this is, Lando? And then I was like, oh. And then at first I was like, why has he done that? I completely forgot about Brazil or any of like... I was like, what? Why? Why have you given him the... And then I was like, oh, yeah, Brazil. Yeah, okay. Suppose. And I was like, oh, did the team orchestrate that? And I was like, no, the team multiple times said, you know, we're happy with the positions to stay as they are. Was a side-by-side in Austria. Was it? I thought it was Indianapolis. The Austria one was when Michael let Rubens win. No, when Rubens let Michael win, wasn't it? And then I'm sure Indianapolis was a side-by-side. I'm sure it was. Maybe that's an example of the Mandela effect, where you think you really clearly remember something and actually it's the opposite. Yeah, Indy was side by side. I thought so, Anton. I thought so. I'm not going crazy. But yes, it was surprising, but you know what? Like, cool, whatever. It wipes the record and puts them on even kiltering for next season onwards. Austria was team orders. Indianapolis was Michael's payback for aforementioned team order, I believe. Yeah, which is, you know, there's similarities there for sure. Right, so I would say that's about the long and the short of it. Before I go, quick one I want to talk about. I've got merchandise coming soon, very soon. And keep an eye on TOMMO'S and the community tab on this YouTube channel. If you want updates. Also, just got something printed, which is quite exciting, which is going to be included in the order, which is a little kind of preview as to what to expect on the... let's see if we can get this going into... Is it going to go into focus? No. Okay. I'm just going to have this from a distance. If you ordered a TOMMO'S Racing Good Drop 1 from early start of this year, wasn't it? I launched them. Stickers. But yeah. So, obviously, you can't just buy the sticker on its own. I'm sorry. You're going to have to buy the associated garments that come with it. But yes, thank you all for watching. Really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you, Hilita, Avkid, Claudia, Antoine, Kev, everyone listening on audio-only platforms as well. I really do appreciate you taking the time. Tomorrow, Qatar race. Later today, qualifying for the Qatar Grand Prix. So yeah, hopefully it's a banger. Hopefully you enjoy. Hopefully I enjoy. And I will see you tomorrow for my post-race Chinwag for the 2024 Qatar Grand Prix. My name's Tomo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.